Huh? What? Axial just released 2 new SCX24s this week? Who gives a flip, man? I just discovered the best freaking hack for the ISO axles ever. Let's go! This is a stock, standard size overdrive worm gear inside the ISO axle, working perfectly. Are you kidding me? So first off, I just want to say thanks to Dustin for sending this truck over, letting me check out these axles. Now that I've kind of got the kinks worked out on it for him, we're going to take it out, run it on the course, kind of see what we think. But I wanted to talk about some of the differences that I noticed in these axles and how I got these to steer closer to what the ISOs are. So just taking a quick look at them here with the wheels and tires on. Obviously, we're setting at a different stance here with these tires. They're tucked in a little more. So things are going to look a little different with the wheels and tires on, but we'll pull them here in a second and take a look at them. These sitting a little wider, it does sort of look like we're not getting as much, but I do believe we're getting basically the same now. And we'll pull the tires off of here in a second and check it out. But I wanted to talk about really the main issue with these that he was having is he wasn't getting near the turning angle that we get out of the ISOs. The main problem was actually just the steering link didn't have near the bend in it that the one on the ISOs has, and you can still see it's different. Even after I've bent this one some, this before would just completely hit the diff at full lock. It was against the diff. You couldn't get any more steering. So I actually bent this a little bit and then changed the rod end out from this shorter rod end to a longer one. So on one side, you'll see I have sort of a longer rod end. So that's the stock right there. Hopefully you can tell that. And I put a longer one on it. And that's really all I had to do there. You can see I extended this one out. I'll probably swap one of those out as well, just to lengthen that, and then we can run this back in some. But lengthened that out a little bit, changed that rod end out, and that was giving us more turning angle. Now the next issue I ran into was at full lock, this thing was really just skipping and binding, like it was binding really bad. And I wish I'd got all the footage on this before I started to kind of prove to you guys what was going on. The main issue I had with the front is I had to change out these hex, come to find out. So I just played around, kept trying to figure out why this was binding when I would put the wheel and tire on. And this fixes 2 issues with these axles actually doing this. So the main thing is with these, they don't actually have like the double joint in them like the ISOs. It's not the same exact shaft. So there was like no play in here, which is actually kind of good. That screw's a little bit loose there, but it was actually kind of good. Whereas you guys know some of the ISOs, these have the rubber O-rings on them, but some of them's a little loose. My first set on this truck right here were like crazy loose. Like it's like I got a loose wheel all the time. See that? I need to put an O-ring on there, but they just disappear sometimes. So it actually prevents that, but since there's no movement in there at all, when I would tighten that wheel down very tight at all, this was just really binding up in there and we were getting crazy skip. So I just put a hex on there that doesn't have this flange on the backside. So hopefully you can see that little lip sticks up on the backside. So I just put some plastic ones on there and did away with those. And now we don't get the skip. You can see if I can hold it, just kind of cut that clean, if that'll focus, maybe. And that took care of that problem. That also fixed the issue Dustin was having with there just not being enough threads on these. So these axle shafts actually have a little less thread on the axle. So when he was tightening these wheels down, it's like the old SCX24 axles. He didn't have enough to really tighten the wheel nut down and it hold. He was having to put the wheel nut on backwards to try to get the nylon washer to catch it all. But I think you can see now we've got quite a bit of thread sticking out and it works great. So that actually solved the problem on the fronts. I may do the rears for him as well, just to kind of fix that problem and then just let him keep those brass hex for something else. So let's take a quick look here. The actual ISOs you can see have this sort of double bend set up here, which allows them to turn so far and be so smooth. These actually don't have the same design to them. This is more like a standard setup here, but I am able to get these all the way over like that and still turn smoothly through it. Now you'll see it's not quite what we're getting with true ISOs, but for most builds, most setups, most people, you're not going to need any more than that. You know, a lot of people say you can't use all of that steering anyways. And you can see here with these 68s and this narrow wheelbase, like I'm not using all of that. Right there I'm maxed out, but I'm not going to be able to really turn that smoothly because I'm going to be hitting everything, the chassis links, everything. So really somewhere in there is about all I get usually. So that last little bit, you really don't have to have. Now, obviously it depends on your setup. This one, before I put this hard body on here, I was 100%, and I'm still actually able to use all of that. These are true ISOs, and you can see I'm not hitting the link or anything at full turn, and this will turn smoothly through all of that. So it kind of depends on your build, but the reason I say these may be actually kind of worth this for a lot of builds is you can get this front axle off of AliExpress for like 25 bucks or something, maybe 30 something by the time you pay shipping. And then you can do this a little bit of work here and have a really good turning axle. Now the only thing I'm curious about is, will these shafts fit in here? So we're gonna try that in a minute. But I wanted to talk about the difference in the rear a little bit and why I wouldn't buy the rear axle at all, okay? So I would just purchase the front axle if I was going to go with these and just use the stock rear, maybe widen it up with some wider shafts or something, because that's basically all they've done with these. As you can see here, they just have wider shafts with a spacer in there versus the actual ISO axles are a wider housing. So let's measure this real quick. Looks like 45 probably is what it should be. And you'll see here, 45 from the center of that is out here right where they've got their spacer. So this is just a wider shaft inside a standard housing, basically. Just their version of it, whoever makes these. The other issue with this rear axle, a couple things, in my opinion, you don't get any sort of like link riser. You basically just get a stock link mount. I like that the ISOs come with multiple options here for your upper links. So that's a plus. And then you also, which is crazy, but these don't really have a shock mount spot on the rear. So unless you have a crazy long 1.4 screw that's probably going to bend or break to go all the way through your shock and through the links and everything, you're going to have to do something like what Dustin's done here, just kind of make your own little mount for your shock. As you can see, the way he's got his mounted up versus on the actual ISOs, we have shock mounts here. So I don't know, it's kind of strange the way that rear axle is made. So me personally, I would just totally avoid the rear axle. Maybe it's up to you, you know what I mean? I'm one of those people, like, I'm probably just going to spend the money and get true ISOs. But this is an option if you maybe picking something else up from AliExpress. You can get this for, you know, 25 bucks, throw it in with your shipping. Pretty dang good axle for 25 bucks, I would say. I do want to pull this apart. I've seen people say that you can swap out the gears and everything in these, but I at least want to check this shaft and see if it's interchangeable between the two. So we'll do that real quick. I pulled these apart because I wanted to see what worked between the two, trying to cross over parts from one to the other. And it's a little bit complicated, probably going to be confusing, especially the way I explain things, but try to keep up right here. So the ISO axle right here comes with this wider worm gear in the front. That's why we have to use the worm gears that Meus has for the ISO axles in the front. The rear uses a standard size, which is this size width. So I think you can see the difference between those without me having to measure them. So we've just kind of been stuck with what Meus gave us for the front axle of these. It's really the only downfall to the ISOs, that, and I wish they offered them in nylon. But when I pulled apart the knockoffs over here, they had this standard size SCX24 worm gear in the front. But they were set up with a bearing and a bushing, like I have here. So it made me think, hey, can we just do that with the ISOs? Because it's like the same exact design, basically. So you can see, this is how the knockoffs come, with a brass bushing here, bearing, then the gear in there. So this is a standard Mofo 33% gear here. It does fit in there. It does work somewhat, but when I started putting the knuckles and everything back together, put the drive shaft on it, actually powered this up and ran it, it was binding pretty bad. So there's one point in here, once you get everything together, where that's just kind of catching with the Mofo gear. But it seems like it will maybe work with this gear. So let's measure these two, because is there a slight difference? So 4.49, pressing down as tight as I can get it. And the Mofo, there is a tiny bit of difference. That's nuts, okay? Just the tiniest bit of difference, but it does make a difference in here. So we could probably make this work with this bushing, then a bearing, then our overdrive gear. We may have to like file this down a little bit, grind this a little bit off the face of this gear, or shave our bushing down just a tad. We'll get a measurement on this bushing in a second. Let's try a Trill overdrive SCX24 gear, because I'm just curious now if it's just maybe the Mofo won't fit. And we're just kind of flying off the radar at this point, guys. We're just doing whatever. So this is the 213 overdrive from Trill. Let's measure this. See, it measures more like, so maybe the Mofo is just a little bit thicker. I think this Trill will work. Okay. Let's put this all back together. Like, I don't believe it until I put it together and see it run. So I'm going to put all of this back together, but that is spinning much more freely. So the Mofo in there, it would spin pretty good, but then at some point I would hit a spot where it would get just a little bit tight. Well, once you put everything back together, it was worse. This axle would really bind up. That looks like it's going to turn pretty clean. So this bushing may be the answer to just using whatever, well, not whatever. Apparently the Mofo is a little thicker. As you can see, it says Mofo RC on it. It apparently is just a tiny bit thicker than stock, and it makes all the difference in these axles. So this, like I said, the Trill 213 here looks like it's going to work. I'm going to go ahead and install this, and we'll see if it turns smoothly once it's completely built. Let's go ahead and let's pull this. I'm everywhere. I'm excited right now. Sorry, guys. So this bushing is like a 3 millimeter on the inside. I guess technically a 6 on the out, maybe. It measures a little bit smaller. You can see there. Thickness. I mean, if I press down on it tight, 1.8. Maybe it's meant to be a 2. I don't know. 2's pretty loose on it, so 1.8. And maybe it is 2. I don't know, but that is what this bushing is measuring. I will try to see if I can find any of these. I may have some. I don't know. I need to look through all of the bushings I removed. Maybe it's just sort of a standard size bushing. We'll see. I think it's a little thinner because most of your bushings are almost the same thickness as your bearings. And you can see this one is not So it may be a little bit hard to find that bushing. I don't know. But if we can find those bushings, we can run different overdrive in these axles. So this is the ISO axle with the Trill overdrive worm gear in the front. Look at that. Working perfectly. Are you kidding me? I'm done. So I've learned a ton by tearing Dustin's truck to pieces. So thanks, Dustin, for letting me do that. No, I'll put it back, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. The cool thing is, with this hack, I'm probably going to go ISOs now every time. At first, for a second, I was thinking, hey, these use stock standard size worm gears. That's even, that's another plus for those. But now that we can do this, I don't know, because here's another difference. You don't get the brass knuckle with the knockoffs. You get an aluminum knuckle, and there's about a 13-gram difference between each one, I believe. 12, 13, that's like 7 grams. That's with the bearings in it. That one's 19 grams with the bearings in it. So 12 grams each side is 24 grams of weight. If you don't need the weight, then it really doesn't matter. The only other thing is it's almost the same exact knuckle, but this uses a M1.4 screw where the steering link mounts here. And the ISOs use a larger screw, which is nice because the 1.4 screws, they're pretty small. They're kind of fragile when you get high powered servos and your steering's taking a beating. So that's another plus for the ISOs. And now that all we need to run like the Trill overdrive in here is that 3x6x2 bearing or bushing, that's pretty freaking amazing. So I ordered some of those bearings. They'll be here in a couple of days. I'm going to set this up just like it's sitting now and run it. For now, I'm going to put Dustin's bushings back in his and put it back and get him running. And we're going to go run this thing on the course and just have a little bit of fun. One other thing Dustin mentioned about the front axle on this, and hopefully you can see on the upper link screw, he has a white piece of servo horn there. He's used as a nut for the back side of that screw. So the way the servo mount on this is set up, you can't really fit the links in the center and run a long screw through both of them. And then when you mount the links on the outside like he's done, only one side is threaded. So he had to just run a screw through there and either put a nut on the backside or like he's done with the servo horn piece, screw into it. So that's something else you will have to do. You could probably put a different servo mount on here. That's something I didn't play with. I think he had to maybe grind this one down a little bit to fit those front links as well, as you can see. So it's a little more like a stock, the way we used to have to do on these to make a 4-link work, just grind and cut on stuff. So these will take a little bit of playing around to make them perform well, but I think we've got them pretty well lined out. A little bit about this truck here, as you can see, it's got a seater in it, the Lizard Light, I believe, or what's in that? Lizard Pro, ramp crab servo that I just put on there to hopefully help him get a little better steering. Servo horn, we need to cut that screw off or put a shorter screw in it, but just kind of threw it together real quick to get a quick run in. This has, I don't know if this is an Endura or what chassis this is, but just sort of a basic LCG chassis. I don't know much about this. It is what it is here. Got a pretty cool magnetic body, drops on. Only problem I see is we don't have a 2FM sticker. I can't even run this. So I also played around with his throttle a little bit, tried to smooth it out. He had a massive jump from the low speed crawl, like super slow, to mid. Now we got a pretty smooth transition going. Definitely feels better. Look at that steering angle. We're getting into the body now. This is running a 3S pack in it. I should have stayed with that. I just really don't want to break his body or truck. Love the look of the mudslinger stretched onto the 1.3s. Mudslingers do pretty good out here, but they're so meaty that you get a little skip when they slip there, you'll see. So that makes some climbs tougher. Maybe we can get a bite right there, come on. There we go. Look at this front, like we're digging into the body now. To the top. So I don't know why I'm getting this stutter going downhill. Let's play around with it. What's up with that? Man, it handled that well though. Very well. Really, bro? Dude, these cats, man. You'd think I was like a cat fanatic, but I'm really not. I like all animals, but gosh, cats gotta be like the most annoying thing on earth. You gotta love them, but you gotta hate them because they're so freaking annoying. They are the biggest a-holes on earth. You can't convince me that there is a bigger a-hole than a cat. But then they're just like the sweetest, coolest thing ever sometimes. Definitely a love-hate with all of our cats. So I've got to try this climb. Dustin lives close to an hour and a half, at least an hour and 20 minutes away probably. And so he's never been out here to run on the course. None of his trucks. This is the first one ever, I think. Oh man, it can get this. Slingers don't really like this climb. Ha! Ah. Oh, what? It should have caught right there. So I don't know if it's these axles or what. I get this weird hang up in reverse. It's kind of odd. I don't know. Let's see if it does it right here. See that little glitch? It does it going downhill too, but then everywhere else it's like super smooth. So the rear is actually turning slightly before the front if you watch. See that? So that's probably what's causing that weird like shimmy when going downhill. The rear is like almost pushing the front a little bit at very low speed. See that? The rear like engages first, just barely. So we definitely need to put him some overdrive in that front, or I'll at least try to send him some. You can definitely see the rear is engaging first. It's nuts, just barely, but it is. So I do feel like that the knockoff axles here have a little more play in the gears, maybe, I don't know. It just seems like there's a little more there than here. What do you guys think? I mean, it looks like it's clearly a little bit more. So, look, it's up to you. Do not buy the rear axle. Front, I would definitely plan on changing the worm gear. I guess, I don't know. And I guess that's what the play is in that worm gear up front. I would just plan on putting overdrive in there anyways. You're going to want overdrive, so pick you up some overdrive for the front. You can get away with these shafts that are in it. They are nice and beefy. I don't think we're going to have any issue with them breaking. You're going to have to make a couple mods if you want to go crazy steering, probably. So I can see both ways. For me, I will just be sticking with my ISOs, but pretty good value in them if you're willing to put a little bit of work into them. Like I said, the gears in the front, you're probably going to change that anyways. ISOs, if you buy front and rear, they do come with the underdrive for the rear. And now we know how to make overdrive work in the front. So Meus does offer a overdrive for the front now. They're here somewhere. I've been digging through stuff. They do have an overdrive now that you can buy. Look, I just have to label it. I hate when companies give us stuff like this and it doesn't even tell you what it is. I mean, obviously worm gear, I know it's SCX24, but I don't know, you know? So like, really wish everybody put something on there like this, you know? Anyways, for me, I'm probably sticking with ISOs. Not a bad value here if you want to put a little bit of work in. You guys let me know what you think. I appreciate you watching. If you stuck around this far, you're amazing. Thank you so much. Peace. I don't think we're going to make this one. Especially with the rear engaging first. Let's go up the crack right there, come on. Tearing the course apart, look at that. Come on. Yeah, let them slingers eat. See, watch when I go down right here. See that? See that little bit of clicking? I don't know if that's because the rear is almost kind of pushing the front. Definitely gonna have to try to sort that out. This thing's balanced out pretty well though. Goes up and downhill pretty well. Yes. I think for this one, we're gonna need a little overdrive. Yeah, not quite gonna do that one. If we could get the right hop, just bump it in the front end drop and catch traction. Fall in a hole over there. The thing always lands on its tires. It's crazy. Oh, there it is. Yeah.